This is SIG P365 380 and SIG P365 XL 1000 round reviews part 2. Let's get to jabbering. As we mentioned in our part 1 of the video, I said for some people, and I use myself as an example, that the 365, the 365 380 and the 365 XL would be equally concealable. These are concealed carry personal protection home defense firearms, so we're going to sort of tailor our comments to those aspects of these firearms in general. Now here we can see my 365 380, and I'm going to use this because it's the same size as the 9mm version. There's some subtle weight differences, different recoil string, but for all intents and purposes, size-wise, we're going to say this is the same size as the 9mm version. As you can see, I have mine unloaded here. We have no magazine. All the firearms we're handling today are going to be unloaded, no magazines in sight. You'll see I've even taken the magazines out of my shoulder holster so that way we don't run any risk of somehow accidentally loading a firearm. Now, if we talk about reliability on these firearms, let's start with our P365 380 first, since this is the one that we fired the most recently. Now, I purchased this firearm, I think a little over a month ago now, and I wouldn't say that we intentionally raced out to get 1,000 rounds through it. It was just so much fun to shoot this gun as much as we did that it was like, wow, we really got that many rounds through it this far? I couldn't believe it. Don't tell my wallet, though. It can. Which, getting over 1,000 rounds is more than what the gun cost me in ammo, but worth it. Totally worth it. A lot of fun. Zero failures. Unless you count the ones we intentionally induced with snap caps. I don't count those. Zero failures through this firearm. It's been extremely reliable. You've seen on this channel so far that we've gone out and we've fired this when it's at 10 degrees, when the wind is howling and it feels like it's negative 40 degrees outside, when there's blowing snow, when there's rain. No issues. Now, in my experience thus far, this hollow sun on this SIG has been without fail. It has been extremely accurate. It's been very reliable. The same as with our P365. You've seen on this channel where we've gone out and we've fired this down when it's 10 degrees and the weather's howling. The thing I really liked about this setup, and it's sort of obvious in some of the videos, at least the more recent ones, is I forget how much fun it is to shoot this with the hollow sun on it. When you compare that to the iron sights on your regular handgun, where you don't have a floating reticle that is above your firearm to where you don't obscure the target. So when I'm shooting the 365 XL and I'm aiming at a target, aiming down at it, and I have the reticle zeroed over the bullseye, and I pull the trigger, and you see the splatter target, the hole on the splatter target materialize. There are many times that I fire this 365 and I go, holy that impacted exactly where the reticle was on the paper when the firearm went bang. Now that's often not at the bullseye like I was intending to be before going bang, which shows the amount, at least for me in particular, how much variation there is moment to moment with how the firearm is going to be, moving around in your grip, in your hand, the wind blowing on it, you breathing, everything else. But point is, with the hollow sun, with that floating reticle up above the firearm where I'm not obscuring the target aiming at it, you can see where the bullet hits with reference to where you were aiming at the moment of pulling the trigger, and that is really cool because then this gun is dialed in. I think one of the things that you would have seen, at least in my opinion, as a not expert shooter in our video, our part 1 video, is that with the iron sights on the 365 XL and the 380 version, that they are both very capable firearms in terms of the accuracy available with the iron sights. Now, I think with the hollow sun, most shooters are going to enjoy that setup, in my opinion. There's going to be some shooters that are going to do extremely well with it and probably others that are not going to be a fan of it. But I think in general, it's going to be a very popular setup for most people. So Bud was reminding me that we should talk about the mounting plate and the different mounting style between the 365 380 and the XL version. So let's spend a moment doing that. And I will superimpose some pictures to better see what I'm talking about here. But one thing you will notice, if on the 365 380, it has an optics cut where when you put an optic on there, you're going to retain your rear sight. Now, a lot of people who are going to mount an optic on here are probably also going to put some suppressor height sights or something to where that they actually retain the co-witness ability. I suspect with these sights they would be too low profile to co-witness, but if we eventually do put an optic on here, we'll know. Now, if we compare that to the 365 XL with the optics cut designed by Zev here. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the optic cut goes right to just about the end of the frame here, and you have no rear sight. Attachment point for the top plate is the underside of those sights. The screws go from the underside through the frame into that sight and lock that frame and the plate in place, which I think actually give it a cleaner look than the style of plate that they went with on the 365 380, where they have the two screws exposed at the top. Now, I don't have a good shot of that. I'll try to dig up a marketing material image so that we can see that. But what that means then is when you remove the plate on the 365 XL, you also, as a byproduct, have removed the rear sight, and the optic actually sits down where that sight was. And in the now, as you would have seen in our part 1 video, we did turn this hollow sun off and use, because this has a built-in rear sight. We did test that out to assess the functionality of it, and it did work. I think it was not, it was functional. It was not something where I would intentionally do that if it wasn't just to, assess its functionality. For me personally, I like seeing the rear sight in the gap of a rear sight, and with how this sight is designed, you really only see the top half to a third of it, if that. And to me, it felt very obscured, and I'd probably have to put more effort than I would want to in a real life situation, which would probably cost me time and worse. So I do agree with the internet that I would like to see a design that has the rear sight still there. However, cosmetically, I like this design by Zev floor plate cut that they did here. So it's kind of like, functionally, I like the one way, to the cosmetic eye the other way. Why would you put an optic on a gun this size? Why don't you just get a larger firearm? Why don't you just get something different? Well, I guess those are good questions, maybe. I'll try to answer them a couple of different ways. And I feel like another is, if we go back to our 365 XL, well, so as you can see, we have fired the 365 380 with the XL grip, and it's a ton of fun, the bee's knees, as I mentioned before. So I feel like as a result, while we haven't fired the 365 380 with the hollow sun, we have fired what would be a close enough representation in terms of size to where I can say I feel like I can conceal the hollow sun on the 380 the same as I would otherwise. Shoulder carry. Now, where I would hesitate is, and the reason why I don't have one on here yet, is there are still occasionally times that I pocket carry this. And in my clothing, I could not, I don't think, pocket carry this with the hollow sun on it without it being too large, we'll say. But I don't think everyone is in that boat, and I think if I did put a hollow sun on it, I could still very easily carry it inside waistband or even outside waistband if you were not concealed carrying or whatever. But I think there are plenty of other options besides pocket carry if you did have an optics like the hollow sun on it. Now, another why you would do it would be we'll just flash around to different videos and images, but if you can get a a reticle like that and you need it, or you're just better with it, why wouldn't you? I mean, 380 is awesome. It's perfectly serviceable for most people. I feel like there's no reason to knock them if that's what they're comfortable with. I know another area we're going to discuss on this firearm is going to be the trigger. Now, the trigger that comes with the 365 380 is the standard SIG curved trigger. On the 365 XL, with it having the XL frame, it has the flat face trigger that they say breaks at 90 degrees. Off my trigger gauge, the trigger on my 365 380 was approximately 4 pounds 6 ounces. Off the 365 XL grip, that's 4 pounds 5 ounces. So not really, I would say, a difference in trigger pull weight for at least my particular grip frames. We're going to say they're close enough to be the same. Now, they do have slightly different triggers. As I said, this one has the curved trigger, and we will verify it's unloaded, of course. And I mean, and they do have a trigger return spring, so the trigger, unlike say a Glock or the Hellcat, after the trigger is used and break, it will spring return. The 365 XL, let's reconfirm we're empty, and you can see here's the breaks at 90 degrees, trigger return spring, it returns back. You know, say unlike a Glock or say the Hellcat, where after you fire, unless the slide articulates, that trigger is going to stay back, or in the fired position, we'll say. Now, I would say one area that I am not a fan on these firearms is I do not like the tactile, how they feel when they're pulled. I don't want to call them gritty or mushy, and I think what it is actually that trigger return spring kind of fighting you. And in a couple places, it kind of feels like there's a couple little hitches or something in it where it's like click, click, or not. They're not clicks. They're just like humps. I don't know, humps or something, or maybe it's where a leg of a spring is dragging on something. I'm not sure, but I don't know, wishy-washy. There's some sensation. I'm struggling to find the right onomatopoeia for it to describe it, but it's actually in all my 365s in one way or another that the trigger on them, and again, I think it's something to do with the trigger return spring that I just don't like. And over thousands of rounds, it just stays there. And it's like, all right, it's a functional trigger. It works. I can shoot it well enough. But if there was one thing I was going to change on it, it would be how it feels when the trigger on these is pulled. And again, I'm struggling to find the right word for what that is. There's just something that's not, that it could be more pleasant, we'll say. But again, these guns have fired without fail. They've been reliably 100% reliable for me. Zero issues. I'm not an expert. That's just my not an expert opinion. Now, one of the things that we're likely to get in comment, suggestion, otherwise, is going to be, well, try out, say, a Wilson Combat grip frame or one of these other grip frames that might be available, or try this trigger or that spring setup, or any number of modifications one could do to change their firearm to better suit, say, their needs. Now, one of the things that is my thoughts on my personal protection home defense carry firearm is, other than changing sights, and I'm going to include an optic in sights, so between the iron sights, changing out to, say, a night sight if your gun doesn't come with night sights, or if you prefer, say, a fiber optic target style sight over a plain Jane night sight, whatever it is. Sights, I think, are an area where if you're going to change them to be better, there's nothing wrong with that. Grip frames from SIG, where you can interchange them, that is a really nice feature to have, and I think it's sort of, for some people, it's going to remove the question of reliability. If it comes from SIG, they designed it to work in a specific way, it should work with all their firearms if they're all, supporting it. Now, I can't speak on any other grip frames or parts other than SIG because I have not replaced any of parts in my firearms. On my personal protection, home defense, concealed carry firearms, I try to leave them stock other than maybe changing the sights or a grip panel, which in this one, say the grip frame. Maybe I would go to, say, the XL frame on my 365 380, for example, and I'd be comfortable doing so. But some changes like springs, triggers, other internal components, I'm more apt and most likely to leave them stock And that's just for me, my personal comfort. You know, if the gun does not perform well enough in that regard for me, it's probably not the best choice for me to be my home defense personal protection concealed firearm. But as we've seen in, say, our Phantom video, I am not opposed to changing any number or a lot of parts. Now, on my shoulder holster, this is the one that I use, and for some other firearms like my Beretta or my CZ, I have what some people would say is a nicer shoulder holster, but I think this Galco, it's just a simple budget shoulder holster, is actually perfectly functional. I can't get the firearm out without taking the strap off, right? I mean, that's what you want. The other thing I would say that is nice is that, now the temptation would be to do these looser than what you probably should. I know I think it's more comfortable having it a couple notches down, but the reality is if you have it too loose to where it's, you know, hanging lower, what will happen is if you bend over to pick something up, your gun flops forward, your magazine holder, whatever, flops forward. And if you're carrying like in an overshirt or a sweater or something that's open, gun could be flopping out, exposing that you're carrying, right? So that's kind of bad. That's why I say fit your holster properly. And if you don't know, ask somebody who does know, not me. So as you can see, it goes in easy, comes out easy. I like it because I am mostly in a car driving, right? And having something on my hip and the small of my back, something sitting in a car seat where you're quickly, it starts poking me and gets uncomfortable. And if you're in the car for like 4 hours or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So shoulder holster for me is the way to go. I feel like I can have just a light sweater, a t-shirt sweater that I got off Woot, anything, you know, that just sort of covers up the holster but doesn't obscure my getting to it. And that, you know, for me, I could get there quickly and easily to at least feel safe for me. Now, I mentioned that, like say for my 365 XL, again, here you can see unloaded, no magazine. Let's go ahead and we will take out our 365 380 and we will put our 365 XL. And as you can see, it fits in just the same. Barrel pokes out slightly, but that's actually quite common on these style holsters. Fits in just fine, easy to carry, doesn't poke out any different. Wearing under a t-shirt or whatever, or under a button-up shirt or something, you'd be fine. Now, one area that the 365 380 has an advantage, and it surprised me, is going to be in the price point. I expected the 365 380 to come in at the same price as the 365 and 9mm, and I can even get the 365 XL at the same price. However, I purchased the 365 380 full MSRP $499. It's $100 cheaper than what the 365 9mm and the 365 XL go for in store. And in fact, yesterday when I was in store buying ammo, they had both those firearms still on the shelf at $599, and they actually had the 365 380 red tag special that day on sale $449, so you could get even $50 cheaper than the MSRP and $150 cheaper than the other two. And while you don't have a lot of ammo to choose from, you can still get quite a bit of ammo for $150. Well, not quite a bit, I should say, but at least a couple more boxes. Now, is that enough to where I would just buy it instantly on the price difference? As a fan of 380, probably. But if I wasn't a fan of 380, it would be something I would have to seriously consider. And while it's not really a topic of this video, one thing we will mention because, well, I mean, it's going to be a question that's come up and it's going to continue to come up is if you can get the Ruger LCP Max in 380, which is a 10-round micro double stack 380, which would be a pocket carry pistol, why would you go with the P365 380? And I think that's a very good question, a very valid question, and I think it really comes down to your necessary carry method. If you need to carry a pocket carry 380 and you can't go with a gun any bigger, yes, the Ruger LCP Max is an excellent firearm. It's very reliable. It's been every bit as reliable as our P365 380. However, to get down to this pocket carry size, you do give up some things like shootability and ease of shooting, a fantastic trigger, aftermarket things like a bigger grip frame option, for example. Now, does that mean that this is a worse firearm? No, it's a perfectly excellent, serviceable firearm, and at the intended ranges that it's intended to be shot at, it is very capable, certainly more capable than I can shoot it at, and I feel like I'm at least competent enough with it to carry it. That being said, the P365 380 has some advantages that I mentioned, like in the size and shootability. With the 365 380, I can fire more rounds quicker on target than I can with the LCP Max, and that just comes down to the size difference and how much easier it is to shoot the 365 380 versus the LCP Max for me personally. So while I think the LCP Max is an excellent firearm and that anybody that's going to be pocket carrying something in a 380, I think they should certainly consider it. If you can afford to go up a size and you don't have to pocket carry something that small, I think you should certainly consider something like this 365 380. For me, it has been extremely reliable. It's worked in numerous different weather conditions with every ammo that I put through it thus far, and it's been a very easy, reliable gun to use. Really, the only place I can knock it is that ammo is expensive, and that's kind of out of this gun's control. Okay, so let's get into our closing thoughts before this video turns into a third one. We'll start with the P365 380, and I continue to say that I think this is an excellent firearm. I paid MSRP $4.99 for it, and I think even at that price point, it's a steal. It has a whole ton of great features that we don't typically see in a 380 today. A 10, 12, 15 round capacity, micro double stack, optics cut out the box. You have the rail on the front, included factory night sights that are replaceable. You have the grip frame and the same trigger that are out of the 9mm version, so you can swap it with all those parts. It has a lot of great features going for it. Just about the only downside I can give to it is that it's in 380, which today is a caliber of ammo that is harder to find and more expensive than it probably should be. Now, I think 380 is an incredibly fun cartridge in general to shoot, and there are a lot of excellent firearms in the caliber, some not so much, but many of them are extremely fun to shoot, and ammo shouldn't be nearly as expensive as it is in this caliber, in my opinion. Now, if we move on to the 365 XL, again, this is a firearm that is incredibly reliable. It's very accurate and very easy to use as a concealed carry, personal protection, home defense firearm that also includes many desirable features in a firearm this size and price point. Now, it comes optics cut from SIG. This is an optics cut designed by Zev. Now, that is, while it is optics cut out the gate and supports something like this Hollow Sun, one thing to keep in mind is you do lose the rear sight if you put an optics on it, and to some people that is going to be a downside and an immediate turnoff. Now, you have the rail on the bottom here that you could put a light, a laser, any type of attachment that you can think of on there that would fit, and you have the XL grip, which is the micro double stack compact grip frame that's a little longer, that uses the 12 round magazines, and you can even use the 15 round magazines if you remove the little sleeve on it. Now, some people would say in a firearm that size that why don't you just step up and go with a full-size one, though I think you can counter that with saying that you still want something that is light and easy to carry, and this is certainly both of those things, and you still have 12, 15 rounds, and if you go with, say, an extension, maybe even more. Now, while I do think on both firearms that the trigger can be better, I certainly think it is good enough for the intended purpose. I haven't had any problems with it, and we have thousands and thousands of rounds now through both firearms. Now, one area where the 9mm, at least definitely today, has an advantage is in firearm availability and selection. For months now, I have been able to go to the store and find probably a dozen different types of 9mm ammo in 2 and 3, 4 different bullet weights between many different manufacturers. I've had a aisle of selection at multiple stores. So 9mm today is very available, and while I wish it was cheaper, at least in many ways it is a much more affordable ammo than 380. Now, on the flip side, with the 9mm, the 380 version, like I said, ammo can be very hard to find. In fact, most places I go, I still don't see 380 ammo. Yesterday I was in the store and I had, again, an entire aisle of 380 or 9mm ammo to pick from, and I had 2 different kinds of 380 target ammo to pick from. Both of those were $38 a box for 50 rounds of ammo compared to $18 a box that I could get target 9mm ammo with. So that gives you an idea of not only the price but the selection difference available today. Now on top of that, the magazine availability is really unknown. In store, I have not seen a 380 P365 magazine of 10, 12, or 15 round capacity available yet. And while this does come with one extra magazine, I like to have 2 or 3. So one of the reasons you have seen us shoot in basically every video that 15 round magazine, the 9mm one, is I wanted to know the reliability of that magazine because, well, basically I didn't have any other options and I wanted to have another one. So far, again, it's been without fail, and I suspect it will continue to do so. Alright, I think we're going to end our video there before it spirals into a part 3. I hope you found this 1,000 round review video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a good day.